There are things about me that you do not know. Ungodly things. Twisted things. Obsessions. I am something of a collector. I take great care in gathering things that suit my fancy. On itch. I regularly browse itch looking for free games that look fun, because why wouldn't you? I guess it goes back to me being a broke teen with a shitty laptop, and back then I was more of a Game Jolt guy. Whatever the case, I have a folder of like 300 games and I want to talk about them, so let's go! I am a big sucker for games where you play as a tiny guy in everyday environments. There's just so many things you can do with that concept, and Attack on Toys surely does some of them. It's a mixture of third-person shooter and strategy game with both ingredients being simple on their own but tasty together. You spawn soldiers, vehicles and structures in exchange for resources, while your adversaries of somewhat different complexions either spawn in waves or do the exact same depending on the game mode. And those guys know no mercy. Succeeding in a match requires both knowledge of strengths and limitations of each unit and fluency in janky controls. But the fusion that Attack on Toys is, I'd argue, shines the brightest in pure sandbox. If you ever found yourself cruising Vice City causing mischief, or maybe more recently making random battles in tubs, then this game will scratch some sort of itch you have, you weirdo. In Cave, Legend of the Forge, there are no stakes, no threats, nor there are challenges to overcome. There's only a little guy and a cave. And Cave's lack of content, or really any idea of what it really is more than understandable. It's no more than a tech demo, so one can go around, look for some ores, smell them and forge into better tools. Within an hour you are digging with mithril pickaxe. The end. It reminds me a bit of Cookie Clicker and the monkey brain reasons behind spending times just to make an abstract number go up. But the relaxing nature of it combined with some really nice pixel art, thought through menus and overall production quality makes the time you spend with it really nice. Though I'd much rather prefer a game with some meat on its bones. Kitchen Gun is a game for people that are both non-epileptic and can be entertained by simple things. All there is to ever know about and to do in this game is that you are shooting at kitchen appliances while avoiding killing cats. There is some grounds for exploration of the implied love for the latter and hatred of cleaning the former, but instead, let me mention the quite stellar art style. I don't know how one would categorize it, but if I have seen this on some Flash Games website back when I was spending time on such, I will be quite impressed. Might even consider it high production quality. So this game has some vibes, and the developer behind it, Ash K, is full of vibes. His itch page is populated with digital toys and little blip bloop machines, and he even made the little wacky text editor that sells for almost nothing on Steam. Good stuff. Shift is more than a name that makes this game pretty much unsearchable on the internet. It's a simple, couple minutes long FPS where you shoot at drones and are able to dash. And that's literally it. It has that sterile Unity project look to it, and while dashing, which is called shifting, which was expected to be such a standout feature that entire games named after it, the screen blurs weirdly, very much confusing my brain. It also takes a long ass time to launch, so it's either programmed poorly or I'm mining for some Bitcoin right now. But hey, it's clearly a thing done by a guy honing his craft and a far better FPS that I could ever make. Psycho Taxi Rewind is, fittingly to its name, a Crazy Taxi clone. It doesn't have Sega's intricate boosting mechanics, but it has the same structured, colorful vibe, map with tons of shortcuts, decent handling, pedestrians and other stuff that you can run over, earning points and controller support. And I'm all for it. I love me some Crazy Taxi. Obviously, as this game is just a pitch demo, it's very small in scale. Literally, map is tiny, but thanks to its denseness and multitude of shortcuts and pickups, lends to one or two really rewarding sessions of increasingly higher scores. Interestingly, this demo eventually evolved into Yellow Taxi Go Room, about which I have heard a lot of good things, but I can't help being a little bit disappointed that it's more of a Banjo-Kazooie on wheels rather than Crazy Taxi on even more crack. Daikayu Daikesen is a beat-em up clearly inspired by King of the Monsters, and also unapologetically Japanese, with look of the menus, music and anime girls staring you down while interacting with said menus. Very Toho, very swag, I like it. Gameplay-wise, it's pretty simple. You get a couple of attacks limited by your stamina and another resource that allows you to spit fire or lasers, and you just beat the crap out of some Godzilla ripoffs. And also Godzilla Actual. Stages are pretty huge, and so is the amount of beating that almost all all baddies require, I cannot overstate the sponginess of especially bosses, which stands in a nice dissonance with lack of any variation in combat, nicely landing at Daikayo Daikasen being overall boring and janky. I had issues with controls not working and audio bugging out, but just keep in mind that I'm talking about the itch build, and things might have changed since it became available on Steam, free of charge. And with all those not nice things being said, I believe that Daikayo Daikasen is worth checking out. There has been a ton of honest effort and passion put into it, which I think shows the most in style and the mind-boggling amount of playable monsters, all with their own animations and attacks. Very Touhou, very swag, I like it. Gun Night is one of those games that makes me feel that we got maybe a bit too specific in the ways we categorize our video games. Because if I tell you that it's a pixel art roguelike twin-stick bullet hell, I don't think there would be any questions left to answer. And just like this amalgamation of lingo suggests, it's clearly inspired by the Gungeon, differentiating itself only by aspect ratio that for once will make my life editing this easier, lack of open explorable map that was replaced by linear random levels, which given the scope of the project is understandable, and the most charming of all, you don't level yourself up or just collect better gear, you pick up gun parts, augmenting your firearm in progressively more ridiculous and broken ways. Exploring the limits of how overpowered can your revolver get is where the fun of Gun Night is, and everything else is executed nicely enough so I can't help but recommend going for a couple of runs. Bonkers is a sign of passage of time. What we have here is a very competent 2D platformer with amazing pixel art, great chiptune, cute art style, and somewhat novel idea for its gameplay. It's very Sonic inspired, and just like the Blue Rat, Bonkers bases itself upon usage of momentum, but instead of building it up, stopping and being trusted with careful precision platforming, in Bonkers you carry your momentum with you. Besides standard A to jump, X and B swing each arm applying inertia, so jumping up and swinging lifts you higher, for example. There are also punchy blocks and Celeste-esque dimension shifting, all composing a nice and competent base for a really solid platform. The only thing that seems to be not thought through is the combat. Game would be no worse if you were just able to jump on their heads like usual. Enemy design does not interact with boxing at all. A parry move and a guy that you'd have to attack from above or something would go a long way. But even with that, my opening statement stands true. Bonkers is a sign of passage of time, because a game that in the 90s would blow people's minds with its style and ideas was created in 48 hours for a game jam. A Hell of a Soup is a short adventure game about you providing your loving mother with ingredients for, well, a hell of a soup, after she spilled the last one. Achieving that requires traversing Eldritch post-apocalyptic, clearly Beksiński-esque tiny open world with Goliathan structures, fever dream demons, and references to specific paintings of Mr. Zdzisław. Paired with really decent synthy music and bizarre premise alongside obvious nod towards Postal, it's a joy to run around. On your way you will encounter some demonic roosters that provide some aggressively meh combat, but at least movement is very boomy shooty. It's very easy to start bunny hopping like it's 1999. And well, I enjoy it. Age of Brass is a twin-stick fuck-em-up with spectacular sprite work, atmospheric steampunk eldritch world, and a bunch of inventive mechanics that I do not comprehend. It's based on two things: keeping up the momentum and parrying. Both are implemented more than competently, but work in a manner utterly unfamiliar to anything else, requiring tons of getting used to. You are encouraged to wall jump, but also projectile jump, attack cancel, slide about, and once enough inertia is built, you will become a bullet yourself and damage enemies on contact. While doing all that, you are expected to continuously keep firing a minigun with spread wide enough to encourage getting close and personal. Honest to God, the entire thing already has enough ideas to become the second coming of Devil May Cry. And if you have some doubts about incredibility of this combat, developer shows on each page how proper gameplay should look like. The kind that I could not replicate in my time with this game, but sure as hell I am going to try. Randy Blaster 3D is a doomy boomer shooter, but the doomness is quite surface level. First of all, you get tons of air control. I'm talking long moon gravity double jump, and in a boom shoot with no vertical aiming axis, this is straight up illegal. This mobility was the instrumental force behind level design, as all arenas are narrow platforms to be climbed above either damaging goo or instant kill lava. I guess this guy really liked the chasm. Furthermore, despite no vertical aim, things are not infinitely tall, meaning that you cannot hit anything not on your eye level, in a game with tons of vertical space. With all that being said, I'd like to remind you that it's the itch demo I am talking about, and the free Steam version fixes some issues and adds tons of content, so yeah, check it out. Blood Moon Genesis is a unfortunately named student project all the way from Malaysia. It has one hell of a fantasy setting, supposedly drenched in folklore that I have no chances of picking up on. And while it feels a bit junky compared to how great it looks, it has an interesting idea. Besides the customary for hack and slashes dodge that tight well enough opens enemies up, you have two stances. One with less range and damage but much quicker to both move around and attack, and the other with opposite of all that. Trick is that with switching between them you also switch health bars that regenerate when not in use. So not only you have to keep an eye on those, but also adjust your approach each time. I like that. The only game with similar thing I can think of would be RoboQuest. I suspect that this system in a more fully developed campaign would lead to encounters and enemies being designed to constantly drain HP, and balancing that would be a nightmare, but that's just me rambling. Check it out. Attack on Wendigo is a literal arena shooter, being that just like in Devil Daggers and in the name, it entirely takes place in an arena. In this arena you get to gather up drugs and guns dropped by a circling helicopter, jump all around with Mach 3 speed and nearly unrestricted dash, and oh yeah, pump bulk quantities of lead into some massive kaiju demon monsters, hell yeah! Unfortunately this is not an infinite arena. After a set number of Wendigos, game just ends, but I'd wager that this comes with creators' awareness of game's limitations. There are quite a few guns to mess around with and zooming around is fun, but there's only one type of enemy, and it's quite easy, leaving a sense of lack of progression in player's mouth. So the sole developer decided to cut the game short before its novelty runs dry, giving players a happy ending with a nice heli flight instead of reluctant quitting the game after an hour out of boredom. Galaxian is a clone of, well, Galaxian. I never was much of a fan, more of a Galaga man myself. It uses original graphics and kinda shows that it was a quick thing whipped up by a guy that possibly can do much greater things. I really don't think that aliens are supposed to behave like that, they seem far too eager to fly towards you and hitboxes are auto whack. Also, in order to play again you have to close and reopen the entire game. But what I find to be incredibly endearing hides in the readme. Galaxian was cloned for an uncle that really likes the original, and now he has a really easy way of doing just that, probably on the desktop of his crusty ThinkPad, and I also bet that he was very pleased to be given such opportunity by a kid to whom he is an uncle too. And that just gives me such a warm, cozy feeling that I can't help but give it another go. Raid, or Radically Accurate Dogfighting Experience, is again a literal arena shooter, and nevermore a very quick, well, dogfighting experience where you shoot unimaginable amounts of blimps, fighters and boats in endless struggle for the high score, which I don't think saves sadly. It has that low poly art style that at least to me got synonymous with Unity projects, and if you manage to keep the game running for a while, it spawns enough adversaries to make the poor engine chug. It feels more than alright and is a great companion to some album you wanted to check out, or that 4-hour YouTube drama slopomentary you have been losing brain cells to. Check it out. You are smart, you have an eye for detail. You noticed that those games received about a minute of screen time. And you are right, this is a compilation of shorts. Making those was fun, but I'd have to admit that nowhere near as much as making proper vids. And that decision to make them was made with mostly growing the channel in mind, which they did pretty well so far. So you can expect one of those every now and then in between your regularly scheduled programming. And I have tons of ideas for both, as well as stuff in the works. But until then, take care.